TED Talks help to improve presentation skills, an important part of modern people life. Dale Carnegie wrote the world's first self-help book in 1915. It was titled, "The Book explained how people could get their point across in a way that not only engaged the crowd but made sure that they didn't forget it." This shows that even back then, 100 years ago, people still needed to distinguish themselves from the crowd to succeed. Today, distinguishing yourself is even more important. In this globalized world, competition is tougher than ever. To make yourself stand out, you need to learn how to sell yourself. Daniel Pink, author of the book, agrees, saying in his book that we are all selling, whether we mean to or not. Selling yourself requires a mastery of the art of public speaking. And the equivalent is the TED Talk. TED, Technology, Entertainment, Design, is a popular conference for top thinkers and inventors to present their ideas. All of their presentations, which are available for free online streaming, is a model example of effective selling skills. Since 1984, when it started as a one-off event, TED's popularity grew very quickly, such that now it has a global presence and every day, 5 TEDx events, the international franchise of the original event, take place in over 130 countries. TED Talks feature some of the brightest and most successful people in the world. As such, they are a valuable resource for anyone who wishes to become a better public speaker. Knowing this, the author analyzed over 500 TED Talks until he was able to figure out their common features. Passion can born persuasive presentation. One of the things the most successful people in the world have in common is passion. Passion is the intense, positive feeling you get from pursuing activities which are meaningful and important to you. Also, pursuing something that you are passionate about is the key to achieving success in that given field. Take Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, a successful online shoe retailer. Hsieh is very passionate, although his passion is not for shoes, but for making his customers and employees happy. The passion for happiness grew Zappos into a company famous for outstanding customer service, and a great working environment for its employees. Apart from being the foundation of success, passion is also essential to giving excellent presentations. A group of researchers in 2012 wanted to figure out why investors give money to some startups and not to others. In the course of their study, evaluating the 15-minute presentations of several startups seeking funding, they saw that one of the crucial factors was the passion the presenters conveyed. It turned out passion was more important to them than education, experience, or age. Some people are lucky to naturally have passion in their veins, but those who are not can achieve it by practice. The human brain is constantly changing in response to the input it receives. A study of London cab drivers found that the hippocampus, which is the region of the driver's brains associated with navigation skill, had a tendency to be larger than average, explaining why they are so great at plotting the quickest routes between point A and B. In this same way, if you put yourself in a position where you need to speak passionately on a regular basis, your brain will adapt to the task and you'll be much better at it than before. Tell a story to create an emotional connection with your audience. Steve Jobs was one of the world's greatest public speakers. A lot of people will agree with that statement. What made him so persuasive was that his talks were always overflowing with pathos, just as all successful, persuasive presentations are. The Greek philosopher Aristotle was one of the first to do some deep thinking on persuasive communication. He believed that 3 elements, ethos, logos, and pathos, had to overlap for persuasion to occur. Ethos touches on your character or values. It involves your experiences and education, which prove to your audience that they can trust your perspective. Logos is the logical basis of your argument, which can include statistics or other data which make the reason your point of view is concrete. Pathos is the emotional connection you make with your audience. While the doctor analyzed TED Talks, he found that the most popular presentations had 65% pathos, 25% logos, and 10% ethos. It is obvious pathos is the most important feature of persuasive presentation. A good way to inject more pathos into your talk is by storytelling, as it connects you with your audience and makes your presentation less abstract, and more identifiable. There are 3 types of stories you can do this with. The first is a personal story. Something profound like the earliest memory of your childhood. The second is a story about other people. Like a story of your friend who at first failed at business, until their 3rd try when they became successful. The third is a story about popular brands, companies or organizations. Ludwig Marchane in one TED Talk spoke about his invention Drybath, a skin gel that cleans without water, and how his brand helped people in countries with water shortages. Keep your voice, gesture and body language in sync to form an emotional connection. Talking slowly or quickly is entirely dependent on what the listener is doing at the time. If the listener is driving a car, for example, while listening to an audiobook, then speaking relatively slowly is necessary. However, if the listener is giving their full attention, you'd want to speak quicker to hold their attention. The author found that most speakers use around 190 words per minute, suggesting that this is the perfect speed for a presentation. However, mastering your voice is only the beginning. You still have to pay attention to your body language. As humans, we gain a lot of information from how we move. A study presented students with either a video or audio recording of testimonies from criminal suspects and was asked to decide who was lying. The students who watched the video had a 65% success rate compared with those who listened to the audio, who had a 55% success rate. As a speaker, you might wonder what body language to project. U.S. Commander Matt Eversman suggests that a leader should display confidence and stand straight. A public speaker should be the same. You should stand tall before the audience, demonstrating confidence in your ideas. Another important feature of body language is a gesture. Certain studies have associated a speaker's gestures with how much confidence an audience places in that speaker. To use gesture effectively, you should limit your gesturing to the area between your eyes and your belly button, as these gestures have the greatest impact. Save expansive gestures, such as spreading your arms the widest they can go, for emphasizing your most important points. Release totally new information to make your speech memorable. To capture the attention and imagination of your audience, you need novel and surprising information in your presentation. In one popular TED Talk, deep-sea explorer Robert Ballard presented persuasive arguments for why more money should be spent on deep-sea research. Among other facts that he shared, two were particularly attention-grabbing. The first was the fact that the annual budget of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration (NASA) is equivalent to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's (NOAA) budget for 1,600 years. The second was that the greatest mountain range on Earth lies not above ground, but beneath the ocean. Information that's new and interesting makes people sit up and take notice. And this information can be remembered more easily, also. This is because memory is dependent on dopamine, so when you learn something new, your brain releases dopamine, which acts as a save button. The more novel and exciting the information, the more dopamine is released, and as such, the greater our ability to remember it. Susan Cain also gave a TED Talk in which she discussed the power of introverts. This topic might seem boring and forgettable on the surface, but Cain knew how to shake up the audience. She said, "There is no correlation between producing good ideas and being a good talker." This got executives in her audience interested instantly. As usual, it is a common belief that people who speak up the most in meetings are the most creative. This new information got them thinking, and that way they won't easily forget. Do something extraordinary if you want to make your performing unforgettable. In 2009, Bill Gates' TED Talk went viral. So much attention was brought to it that it even made the news when NBC News anchor Brian Williams mentioned it on air. His TED Talk was about how mosquitoes carried fatal diseases like malaria, and he held up a jar full of live mosquitoes. He then said he didn't see why only poor people should be infected that way. He then opened the jar and set the mosquitoes free. Although he quickly added that the mosquitoes he released were malaria-free, the extreme act drew a lot of attention. The presentation chalked up 2.5 million views on the TED website, and a Google search for the talk returned some 500,000 results. However, you don't have to be that extreme to get the attention of your audience. Shocking statistics will also do the trick. It's a good idea to search for interesting facts and statistics that support your argument. Examples from popular TED Talks are Brian Stevenson's. In 1972, there were 300,000 people in jails and prisons. Today, there are 2.3 million. The United States now has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. John Ronson's 1 in 100 regular people is a psychopath. So there are 1,500 people in this room. 15 of you are psychopaths. Help your audience to see in a positive light, add some humor. Humor can play a crucial role in the business as it has a positive effect on our relations with others. One study in the Harvard Business Review showed that humor reduced hostility, relieving tension, and improved morale among colleagues. Another study examined the differences between average and outstanding business executives and discovered that the outstanding executives used humor over twice as often as average executives. With how powerful humor is, you should incorporate it in your presentations. You could do this in several ways. You could share anecdotes. Something funny that happened earlier that day you could share? It doesn't have to elicit a huge laugh, the aim should be a smile or a small chuckle from the audience. In one TED Talk, Dan Pallotta, founder of the organization that raises funds for medical research and services on AIDS, commented on his role at home. Openly gay, and a father of triplets, Pallotta said that his family life was by far the most socially innovative and most socially entrepreneurial thing he'd ever done. You could also use analogies and metaphors. While talking about the negative effects of economic inequality, Professor Richard Wilkinson of the University of Nottingham described how Denmark has a low level of inequality, and a healthy, happy population. You wouldn't expect this to be funny, but he said, Americans who want to live the American dream should go to Denmark. Use not more than 20 minutes for your presentation. You'd often notice that after sitting through a long talk, you feel exhausted and physically depleted. Your audience might face the same problem. The solution to this is keeping your presentation short, as this enables the audience to easily commit your content to memory. For example, Professor Paul King at Texas Christian University breaks his weekly 3-hour class down to 3 50-minute sessions. The result of this being the students remember more information and generally score higher on exams. TED conference presentations often take 18 minutes, which fits in perfectly in the optimum period of 15 to 20 minutes. With that in mind, it is also recommended that it should not cover more than 3 separate themes, the reason being that most people have little trouble remembering 7 pieces of information. This was discovered through a study carried out by a Harvard researcher in 1956. Researchers have since revised this theory and divvied up that figure into 3 or 4 basic information units, or chunks. For instance, the number of 2,222 is a lot easier to remember than 3,948. The first number describes one chunk of information, the 2, and the second, at least 2 chunks, 39 and 48. This implies that the fewer the chunks, the easier it is to remember them, which is why a presentation should cover no more than 3 aspects. These aspects can be organized in a message map. The first step to doing this is answering the question, what's the most important message I want my audience to take away? After getting your answer, write the message at the top of a piece of paper, like a title. After this, you have to spot the 3 or fewer messages which support your title and list them underneath it. Finally, below each of these 3 supporting messages, you outline their specific content, the meat of your presentation. Wake up all the senses of your audience so they remember your words. Can you remember the last time you were sunbathing? How did your skin feel? What did you smell? What did your environment look and sound like? How clearly can you remember all the details? It is easier to remember things more clearly when we experience them with all of our senses. UC Santa Barbara's Richard Mayer sees the relation between multisensory stimulation and improved memory as the next big thing in future research in cognitive psychology. In his experience, exposing students to multisensory environments, videos, texts, audio, and images helps them better recall information compared to students who receive information through one channel, seeing or reading a text. It follows that if you want to create memorable presentations, you should communicate in a way that appeals to more than just one sense. Here, we'll look at how to communicate information via the 2 central senses, sight and hearing. This means that in creating memorable presentations, you'd be best served to communicate a way that appeals to more than just one sense. Here's an example of how to communicate information via the 2 central senses, sight and hearing. Pictures and text are the 2 main ways we can communicate information via sight. The best TED Talks use pictures rather than PowerPoint presentations that are often filled with text, and this makes sense, as we have a limited capacity for absorbing information. Thus proving, a primarily text-based PowerPoint presentation can be a detriment to the enjoyment of your audience. It is best to use pictures to support your presentation along with a short list of key points that support your message. Hearing is also stimulated by rhetorical devices such as repetition. Two examples being Martin Luther King's famous speech, in which he repeated the four words we still remember to this day, "I have a dream." And Barack Obama's famous "Yes we can," which united the electorate around his vision and carried him on to becoming the President of the United States. Conclusion. Being able to present ideas in a convincing way is one of the core skills needed in the 21st century. It's important to stand out in the delivery of your presentation. And doing this requires a strong emotional connection with your audience. And if you want your audience to remember your talk, keep it short, cover no more than 3 themes and appeal to your audience's senses. Always try to speak to people. Maybe at gathering with your friends or family, build on the skill of speaking about your preferred topics.